healthanswerstv.com.
So, that's a good summary, I think, of about everything. I added on schizophrenia on it because technically schizophrenia is not classified as an anxiety disorder, but people with schizophrenia definitely have a lot of anxiety, and you'll see that, so I kind of threw that in there too. Okay? What? All right. So again, these types of anxiety disorders that you talked about are all listed right here. I tell you guys that I don't practice medicine anymore, but I still do, psychotherapy, still counsel people, right? So I actually see a lot. Well, I see all of these, but they said in the video too, women are twice as likely to be affected by generalized anxiety disorder as men. That really hasn't been my personal experience, but it might just be because I practice in Chandler and it's close to the Intel plant. And I see a lot of men with generalized anxiety disorder. And we'll talk about that here, okay? So if you look at, and you heard what she said in the video, these are everyday stressors that people run into, right? So again, there you are, you're minding your own business, you're a student, for example, right? And maybe you're a student that has to also work, okay? And that's adding some stress on your life. You're having financial issues, right? Because of course school is expensive and you do have to pay your loans back eventually. And maybe you, again, have to work to keep it up with. Maybe you're not getting as much money as you hope that you would get from whatever sources that you have. It's kind of a stressor. That makes sense. People do get stressed about that, right? Maybe it's affecting your relationships. Maybe none of that is affecting your relationships, but now relationships are adding another stressor on. Okay? Health could be involved in that. There are all sorts of these things that are listed up here that are typical stressors that everybody has to deal with at some point in their life. But it becomes a generalized anxiety disorder when it affects your life so much that you can't really live your life, okay? When it starts becoming such a negative part of your life, this anxiety, that you start maybe self-defeating behaviors, okay? For example, say you're really, really stressed about finals coming up next week, right? Okay? So, you're so stressed about finals coming up that you get overwhelmed, that you're constantly worried, you're constantly tense. Now your muscles are all tensed up, and now you're getting, stiff neck and sore back, and now you can't sleep because, you're too sore, and it keeps waking you up, and when you do sleep, you're having nightmares of your upcoming tests, and all the other things get into there. Well, it kind of feeds on itself, and when you get to the point where now you're too stinking tired and too unmotivated and too overwhelmed to go to class, where you're going to review for the test and go over the information that's on the test, that's a self-defeating behavior, which clearly about 10% of this class must have, right? Notice by the sparseness. Okay, either that or we got more rows in it. Did we get more rows of desks? So maybe you guys are just spread out further.
No, there's a lot less people.
Probably are. That's probably a little both. Less people, and we have an extra row of desks. So weird. Anyway, so see the difference though is I diagnose a lot of people with generalized anxiety disorder, again because of like Intel, where every once in a while people will walk in the door and they'll find out, guess what, 200 people are getting fired today. 200 people are being laid off. That's a lot of people. And we're talking engineers that make a lot of money and have good livings, all of a sudden they have nothing. The people that are left are the ones that are getting generalized anxiety disorder, because now, instead of a place where everybody helps each other out, and that's what engineers do, it's kind of like healthcare too, you're always doing CLC your entire life, right? You're working in teams, you're building something, you're collaborating all the time. Well, now you're so worried about you being the next one to be cut. And you start competing with each other and keeping information from other engineers, and that leads to even more stress and decreased productivity, which makes the management even more mad, and then there's even more chance of people getting laid off because it's not making a difference anyway, and then that kind of bleeds over to home life, and you don't have as much money because you're trying to save it up in case you end up getting laid off, and now everybody in the family's unhappy because they have less than they used to have, and it doesn't make sense because you're still working, and now you're snapping at your kid and kicking your dog because you're stressed out. Yeah.
My brother works at Intel in Chandler, and he said 9 of the 10 people on his team are all being treated for anxiety.
Yeah, I probably have 3 of them myself. I'm telling you, I'm seeing a lot of people, engineers from Intel, and I swear I am treating people with generalized anxiety disorder a lot, and given a lot of FMLAs and short-term disability, because it got so bad they literally can't go to work anymore because they can't stop throwing up and they can't sleep, and it's affecting so much of their life that they can't work, which the whole problem was in the first place, is being afraid that they wouldn't have a job to work at. Again, once it becomes that much of an influence in your life, then now it's a disorder, right? Did you have a question, Kevin?
Yeah, so, did you see any similarities in their personalities?
Well, I only see the ones that still have jobs.
Yeah.
Because they have insurance. So the ones that got fired, I don't know what they were like.
So I know a lot of people with autism tend to go into the engineering field, and part of that disorder is anxiety.
Again, the only pattern I really see, and it might just be because of pure odds, is vast majority are Asian. Again, very, very high expectations.
Mm-hmm.
You don't end up as an engineer, period, without high expectations. But all of a sudden, how are you going to tell your family you got fired? You're probably still good at your job. It doesn't matter, right? So, I mean, a lot of different things go into this. Again, these are the kind of things that would cause anybody anxiety, right? It's not a disorder until it just affects your life so badly, you're just devastated. You just literally just can't function anymore. Okay? I'm not saying people that get fired or laid off, which is really the same thing. Everybody gets stressed about that, right? It's devastating everybody. It's just, at some point, it becomes a disorder because it's self-defeating behaviors on trying to get back on your feet are not doing what they should be doing. Okay? Notice on here it has rule out physical causes. Okay? This is kind of where you come in too. Somebody comes in and you think they are having some kind of anxiety disorder, you need to make sure that they do not have a pheochromocytoma, which is releasing adrenaline in bursts, right? And causing them to go into fight or flight and have an anxiety disorder. You need to make sure they don't have Graves' disease, hyperthyroidism, that's releasing that huge amounts of thyroid hormone that is doing literally the same thing to their body, right? Cushing's could be another one, right? Somebody got a Cushing's disease, and increasing cortisol is going to have a long and steady state of anxiety it's going to produce. So If you get nothing else out of this entire week, get that. There is a tendency for people to think, well, if it's a mental condition, they had a panic attack, if it's some kind of anxiety disorder, we get a psychedelic, send them on their way, okay? Well, the psychiatrist is kind of relying on you to have already done your job and make sure that he's not trying to treat somebody mentally that is going to have a tumor growing inside them, okay? So again, something to just keep in mind when you're going through all these anxiety issues. Right? Kind of reminds me of actually something that happened yesterday. My daughter came home and she said, I think she's in the ER, emergency room right now, but she said there was this guy that came in and his shin was swollen, I don't know, maybe that big. I mean, the size of, you know, small pizza or something. I mean, this thing was just huge, right? His shin was just really swollen and infected, and it had maggots in it.
Oh my.
Right? Just eating away his flesh kind of thing. Huh? Right? So just a nasty, nasty wound. Well, here's the thing, is they decided he needed to be admitted, so they sent him up to the floor. A couple hours later, he gets sent back. Actually on his way out the door. Okay, well, it turned out that yes, he left against medical advice, so he signed his AMA paperwork and left against medical advice. But the nurse in the ER saw him walking by, and she like stopped him, told him to hang on a second, called up to the floor, and just started going off on the people on the floor. They're like, well, he went AMA. And she's like, I don't care. He should not have been able to go AMA against medical advice. Well, here's the thing, is yes, he had that big maggot-infested wound, but he was also schizophrenic. When he got to the floor, that's all they read. He was schizophrenic. They didn't even bother lifting up his pant leg to look at the nasty wound. They didn't get that far in the reading.
Oh.
The guy was like, I don't want to be here. They're like, fine, if you don't want to be here, are you going to kill anybody? No. You going to kill yourself? No. Okay, fine, leave. Sign this paperwork. And they sent him on his way because it was a mental condition and they didn't want him taking up space. Never bother even looking at the wound, okay? That would have been an opportunity. The guy with schizophrenia, at least hold him for a little bit to make sure he's not a danger to himself or others while you clean the wound and then send him back to his homeless state on the street, right? At least you could have got him a day or two of treatment, but they chose not to do that because, again, the guy just had a mental condition, so they rule off as a biological issue. That makes sense? If somebody's walking around with a maggot-infested wound, by the way, probably not of sound mind to be able to make that decision, okay? To go AMA. Right? So, OCD. Okay, everybody knows what OCD is, right? So if you get nothing else out of this OCD, at least understand that